Hey there. Ready for a deep dive into the future? We're going to tackle something that might sound a bit, well, a bit dry. But trust me, it's fascinating. We're talking about chambers of commerce.
That's right, but we're not talking about the chambers of commerce of today.
Yeah.
We're going all the way to 2035.
Whoa, crystal ball time.
Exactly. We're going to try to predict what they'll be doing, the challenges they'll face, and their role in the future. All the way to 2035.
All right, so where's our crystal ball? What are we looking at to try to figure this out?
Well, thankfully, someone has already done a lot of work for us.
Okay.
The Association of Chamber of Commerce Executives, or ACCE, they released this incredible report called Horizon 2035.
Okay, and what's the report all about?
It's this roadmap for chamber leaders to help them navigate the future and be successful.
I like that, a roadmap, okay.
And get this, nearly 1,000 ACCE members and partners contributed to this report.
Oh, wow.
So we've got lots of great perspectives in here.
So it's not just like one person's opinion.
It's a real collaborative effort to envision the future of chambers.
I like that. I mean, more minds are better, right?
Yeah, and more perspective.
I think that's what makes this report so fascinating.
Okay, so where do we even begin to unpack all of this?
They've categorized the things that will shape the future into 3 categories. So we have linchpin influences,
Okay.
we've got timeless influences, and finally timely influences.
I love a good category. I'm a big fan of organizing. So let's start with those linchpin influences. What are we talking about here?
So linchpin basically means like a central element holding everything together.
Got it.
So these are like the bedrock of chamber success.
Okay.
So the report highlights 2 linchpin influences.
Okay.
One is catalytic leadership,
Ooh.
and the other is belonging and gathering.
Okay, catalytic leadership. I like that. What's that all about?
Basically, chambers can't just sit back and react to things anymore. They need to be instigators of change.
I like that. Like proactive, shaping things, being a leader. Exactly. And there's this engaging anecdote in the report. They talk about how catalytic chamber leadership transformed some of America's greatest communities.
Ooh, don't leave us hanging.
Yeah, which ones?
You'll have to read the report to find out.
Oh man, you're killing me. Okay, all right. So catalytic leadership, very cool. How about that second linchpin influence, belonging and gathering?
All right, so think about how much the way people connect has changed,
Mm-hmm.
even in the past few years.
Oh, yeah.
We're always online.
Right.
Virtual meetings are like the norm now.
Totally.
And the pandemic really showed that chambers can convene people even without in-person meetings.
Yeah, that's a good point.
They were able to support businesses and communities even when everyone was locked down.
So that's a win for chambers.
Yeah, definitely. But the report raises a really interesting challenge.
Okay, I'm listening.
How can place-based organizations like chambers create belonging in a digitally connected world
Right, because it's almost like place doesn't matter as much anymore.
when you can connect with people from anywhere?
Exactly. So how do chambers stay relevant when place itself is becoming less important?
Yeah, it's a good question. Like, how do you build a strong community when everyone is spread out and online all the time?
Exactly. It's a challenge chambers are going to have to figure out. And
Yeah.
I think it's something a lot of organizations are struggling with.
For sure. All right, so we've got these linchpin influences, but what about those timeless influences? What makes them so important?
Well, the thing about timeless influences is that, well, they've been around for centuries.
Yeah.
And they'll likely continue to be important for chambers even all the way to 2035 and beyond.
Okay, so timeless, ongoing.
Yeah, these are the things that are always going to be there.
So like the classic.
You got it.
Okay, so what kind of classics are we talking about here?
Well, the report dives into quite a few, but let's start with political and social fragmentation.
Ooh, that feels very timely right now.
Oh, yeah.
It's like we're more divided than ever.
Definitely. And the report acknowledges that this is like an age-old problem.
Okay, so how can chambers navigate that kind of polarized world? I mean, they represent a diverse range of businesses and people, right?
Right, but even businesses with different viewpoints often have common ground.
Like what?
Well, they all need skilled workers. They all want fair taxes.
Makes sense.
And they need a pro-growth environment.
Oh,
So
yeah.
chambers can really step up and be that unifying force, bringing people together around these shared interests.
I see what you mean. It's like they're not pushing a particular political agenda. They're just advocating for things that benefit the entire business community.
Right, exactly.
But how effective can they really be when things get superheated politically? I mean, have there been examples where they've actually managed to bridge those divides?
Absolutely. And you know what's interesting? The report talks about how business leaders and chambers often rank high in those most trusted lists.
Oh, that's interesting.
You know, like the ones where they ask people who they trust the most.
Yeah.
It's in stark contrast to elected officials.
Who usually rank pretty low.
Yeah, like way down there. So chambers actually have a pretty high level of trust, which is a great foundation for being a unifier.
That's true. I guess when you're not pushing a particular political agenda, it makes you more trustworthy to people from all sides.
Exactly. But, you know, this brings up another interesting point.
Yeah.
That whole issue of changing expectations of chambers.
What do you mean?
Well, as their role in the community evolves, so do the expectations placed upon them.
Okay, makes sense.
People are starting to see chambers as problem solvers.
So not just for business issues, but for like broader societal challenges.
Exactly. Like they're expected to help create regional prosperity
Whoa.
and tackle bigger issues.
Okay, so bigger expectations, more responsibility. But does that mean they actually have the power to do those things?
That's a good question. And the report acknowledges that this new role will demand new leadership skills and new approaches. It's not going to be business as usual.
So they need to step up their game.
Yeah, exactly. They need to be able to balance these new opportunities with their core functions.
Right, because they can't just abandon everything they've been doing.
No, of course not.
They still need to advocate for businesses and provide those essential services.
Definitely. But it's about finding that balance, you know?
It's like they're evolving
Exactly.
into
It's like
something bigger.
and more impactful.
So how do they actually make that happen? Do they need like a whole new playbook?
In a way, yes. And this leads us to another timeless challenge, one that's particularly relevant in today's rapidly changing business environment. Changing business models.
Oh, yeah. The world isn't standing still.
Nope.
So chambers can't just keep doing things the way they've always done them.
Exactly. And, you know, membership dues have always been the bread and butter for chambers.
Okay.
But the report emphasizes the need for what they call balanced innovation.
Ooh, balanced innovation.
They need to find new ways to bring in revenue without losing sight of their core mission.
Okay, so like side hustles for chambers.
I guess you could say that. They need to get creative. Think about things like partnerships with the local businesses to offer discounts to chamber members,
Okay.
or creating online platforms for networking, maybe even hosting events that appeal to a wider audience.
So it's about diversifying their offerings and maybe becoming a bit more tech savvy.
Exactly.
All right, so balanced innovation, check. But what about this whole idea of an inclusive economy? I feel like that's a hot topic everywhere these days, not just in the business world.
It is. And as you know, the American population is becoming increasingly diverse, which means we need inclusive growth strategies.
So everyone has a chance to succeed no matter their background.
Exactly. And chambers are right at the center of this conversation.
Okay, so how are they being called upon to address this? I mean, it's a big issue.
Well, they can connect businesses with diverse talent pools.
Okay.
They can advocate for policies that support minority-owned businesses, and they can promote a culture of inclusivity within their own organizations.
So they need to walk themselves
Yeah.
and also help their members do the same.
Exactly. But it's not about checking boxes. It's about creating a culture where everyone feels welcome and valued, which is important because a truly inclusive economy benefits everyone.
That's a great point. And it makes you think about those places where chambers have a bit of a reputation, for being a bit of an old boys club. How do they overcome that legacy and become truly inclusive?
It's definitely a challenge.
Yeah.
But the report emphasizes the need for chambers to be proactive, reaching out to diverse communities, building relationships, and showing a genuine commitment to inclusivity. It takes more than just words, it takes action.
For sure. Okay, so we've got political divides, we've got changing expectations, we've got the need for new business models, and we've got the push for an inclusive economy. Is there anything else on this list of timeless challenges?
Just one more. And it's a big one. Digital transformation and technological innovation.
Oh, yeah. Technology. It's moving so fast.
It is. It can feel overwhelming, even for those of us who consider ourselves tech savvy.
Totally. So how can chambers help their members keep up, especially those small businesses without a huge tech budget?
Well, they need to become guides and advocates.
Okay.
They can provide education and resources to help their members understand new technologies, connect them with experts and mentors,
Okay.
and advocate for policies that support innovation and digital infrastructure.
So they're like those Sherpas that help people climb Mount Everest, but for the digital world.
Exactly. They help their members navigate that challenging terrain. But it's not just about adopting the latest gadget, it's about using technology to become more efficient, effective, and connected with their communities.
Right, so it's about using tech strategically to achieve their goals.
Yeah, and in a world where there's so much misinformation and fake news, chambers can be a trusted source of information.
Oh, yeah.
They can help people cut through the noise and make informed decisions based on reliable data and insights.
So they're like fact checkers, too.
That's a good way to put it.
It sounds like they have a lot on their plate.
They do, but it's also a huge opportunity for them to be leaders in their communities.
For sure. Okay, so we've covered those bedrock linchpin influences, and we've explored the timeless challenges that chambers will continue to face. What's next on our journey into the future?
Next up, we'll tackle those timely influences, the pressing concerns that demand attention right now.
Sounds intriguing. Can't wait to dive in.
All right, so let's jump into those timely influences.
Okay, hit me with it.
Yeah.
What's the first one we need to tackle?
Well, the report starts with a big one. I guess you could say the biggest one facing us right now.
Okay, lay it on me.
Chambers as unifiers.
Ooh, yeah, that's a heavy one.
Okay.
I mean, it feels like we're living in this era of like unprecedented division,
For sure.
politically, socially.
Yeah.
It's everywhere. So how can chambers be these unifiers, especially when they're often seen as representing business interests, which might not always align with everyone's views,
Yeah, it is a tricky balance.
Mm-hmm.
But remember, at their core, chambers bring people together.
Okay.
They're all about building consensus and finding common ground to advance the economic well-being of their area.
Right, right.
So they already have this experience.
Yeah,
They're kind of uniquely equipped to be bridge builders in this crazy climate.
I see what you mean. It's not like they're suddenly jumping into politics or anything. It's more like applying existing skills to a new, like a more socially charged world.
Exactly.
But how do they, like, walk that line between advocating for those business interests and addressing the concerns of the wider community, which might sometimes be at odds?
That's where that trust factor comes into play. The
Yeah.
trust we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
When a chamber has that strong track record of community engagement,
Yeah.
when they're seen as really representing the diverse interests of their area, then they have that credibility. They
Yeah.
can step into that unifying role.
Like, they've got to have the receipts to back it up, right?
Right. Exactly. It's not just about saying the right words. It's about having the actions to support those words.
For sure. But, it makes you wonder, how much does the general public even understand what chambers do?
That's a great question. It's something chambers need to be more proactive about,
Yeah.
communicating their value,
Mm.
telling their story,
Right.
showcasing the impact they make,
Okay.
demonstrating that they're really committed to the well-being of the whole community, not just businesses.
Yeah, PR for chambers.
Mm.
That's interesting. Okay, so we've got this idea of chambers as unifiers, right?
Mm-hmm.
But how do they actually do it? Like, what are some concrete ways they can put this into practice? The report must have some ideas, right?
It does. They talk about chambers becoming like conveners of difficult conversations,
Right.
bringing together folks from all sides.
So like the town hall meetings you see in movies?
Kinda, yeah.
But with a chamber running the show.
Exactly. But the challenge is, how do you get people to actually show you, P?
Yeah. Especially when everyone's so polarized.
That's where the chamber's rep as a neutral party is important.
Okay.
They have to create this space where people feel safe to, share their views, where
Yeah.
they can have a respectful dialogue.
Mm.
And the chamber needs to be clear that their goal isn't to push a particular agenda.
Right.
It's about finding solutions that benefit everyone.
It's like they're community mediators.
Yeah, I guess you could say that.
It's a pretty big departure from that, traditional chamber image.
It is.
I'm curious to see how that plays out.
Me too.
Okay, so that's one way to be a unifier.
Mm-hmm.
What else? What else does the report suggest?
They talk about the need for chambers to, promote civil discourse
Okay.
and civic engagement.
So like teaching people how to disagree respectfully.
Yeah, things like workshops on conflict resolution, forums on hot button issues.
Okay.
Even just encouraging their members to be more active, informed citizens.
So it's not just about putting out fires when things get heated. It's about like proactively creating a more civil and engaged community.
Exactly. And this is especially important now.
With all the distrust and misinformation flying around online.
Yeah. Chambers can be those trusted voices, those sources of reliable info.
It's like they're community educators now.
It is a big responsibility.
It is. But, when you think about it, they're kind of well suited for it.
For sure.
They have those connections, the resources, that credibility.
Yeah, they can make a real difference.
Okay, so we've got this whole idea of chambers as unifiers,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm sensing a theme here.
What's that?
It's a lot about adapting to a changing world.
It is. And that brings us to another timely influence.
Okay, Ivy.
Talent development at the speed of business.
Ooh, catchy title.
Right.
So what's that all about? Is this like the skills gap everyone's always talking about?
It is, yeah. It's about making sure businesses have the skilled talent they need to compete in this global economy.
Okay, but how does that tie back to chambers? I thought they were more about business advocacy, not like actual workforce training.
Traditionally, yes.
Right.
But the report says they need to take a more active role.
Okay, so are they going to start offering welding classes or something?
Maybe. But more broadly, it's about partnering with schools.
Okay.
Creating those training programs that businesses actually need.
Gotcha.
Connecting workers with opportunities to learn new skills. Even advocating for policies that support workforce development.
So it's about being a matchmaker, right?
Yeah, exactly. Connecting businesses and workers.
Bridging that gap.
Exactly.
But aren't there already, like, tons of organizations working on this stuff?
There are.
Government agencies, nonprofits, schools.
Yeah, for sure.
So how do chambers fit in? How do they stand out without just, like, duplicating everyone else's efforts?
Well, they have this unique understanding of what local businesses actually need,
That's true.
so they can make sure those training programs are actually relevant, you know?
Right, so they're not just training people for jobs that don't exist.
Exactly. And chambers are really good at bringing people together,
Yeah.
so they can be those conveners.
Okay.
Bringing together businesses, educators, and workforce development organizations.
Got it.
Creating a more coordinated and strategic approach.
So it's less about competition and more about collaboration.
Exactly. And it makes sense because talent development isn't just like some nice thing to do.
Yeah.
It's essential for the economy to thrive.
For sure. Okay, so we've talked about chambers as unifiers. We've talked about talent development at the speed of business. What else is keeping those chamber leaders up at night?
Well, this one might not seem as obvious,
Okay.
but it has the potential to be super disruptive.
Okay. I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
It's called leadership churn.
Leadership churn. Okay, that sounds kind of like a fancy latte.
It does, doesn't it?
So what is it? Is it like when you accidentally put almond milk in your coffee instead of oat milk?
Not quite. This is about the high turnover rate. We're seeing it among CEOs, key staff, and even volunteers.
Oh, wow.
And it's happening both within the chambers themselves and within their member businesses.
So like a brain drain at the leadership level.
Yeah.
Okay, I can see how that would be a problem.
Right.
But why is it particularly bad for chambers?
Well, chambers rely on relationships
Right.
and institutional knowledge to
Yeah.
be effective. Right.
Yeah.
When those experienced leaders leave,
Right.
they take a ton of connections, expertise, and understanding of the community with them.
It's like losing a piece of the puzzle.
It is, and it's hard to replace.
So how do they even begin to address this?
Well, the report talks about proactive succession planning.
Okay, so that's like what? Grooming future leaders.
Exactly. Identifying and developing those potential successors well in advance of anyone leaving, so
Yeah.
they're ready to step up when the time comes.
So it's like building a leadership pipeline.
It is. And it's also about creating a culture of mentorship. You know, pairing those experienced folks with up-and-coming staff, giving them opportunities to learn, documenting all that institutional knowledge so it's not lost when someone leaves.
Smart. Like create a system where leadership is always being cultivated and nurtured.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's not just about reacting when someone leaves. It's about constantly preparing for the future.
You got it. And it's not just about internal leadership either.
Oh.
Chambers can help their member businesses address leadership churn too.
Ooh.
They can offer workshops, connect them with coaching resources, you know, things like that.
So it's like a holistic approach to
Yeah.
leadership development,
Exactly.
both within the chamber and within the broader community.
That's the idea.
I like it. All right, so we've got unifiers, talent development, and leadership churn. Is there anything else on this timely influences list?
One more, and it's a big one. Global impacts.
Global impacts. Okay, I feel like everything is global these days. But how does that relate to chambers? Aren't they, like, by definition, local?
They are.
Yeah.
But in today's interconnected world, it's impossible to ignore those global forces, you know?
Yeah.
Chambers need to be aware of those trends
Okay.
and help their members navigate the challenges and opportunities.
So it's about recognizing that even small businesses are part of this global ecosystem.
Exactly. And the report highlights some areas where chambers can add value.
Okay, like what?
Well, they can help businesses understand global markets,
Oh.
connect them with trade resources,
Mhm.
advocate for policies that, support global competitiveness.
So they're like global connectors,
That's a good way to put it.
helping businesses expand their horizons.
Exactly. And it's not just about helping local companies go global.
Right.
It's about attracting global businesses here, too.
Ooh. Yeah.
Chambers can showcase the region's strengths,
Sure.
highlight the workforce,
Yeah.
business environment,
Okay.
attract those international companies.
So they're like economic development ambassadors.
You got it. And, in a world where talent is super mobile,
Yeah.
chambers need to think about how to attract and keep global talent, too.
Okay.
Promote the region's quality of life,
Yeah.
the cultural amenities,
Yeah.
that welcoming, inclusive environment.
Because at the end of the day, it's people who drive the economy.
Exactly.
So it's about attracting the best and the brightest, no matter where they're from.
And finally, the report says chambers need to be aware of those, geopolitical risks.
Geopolitical risks. Okay, now we're getting serious. Are we talking about war games here?
Not quite.
Yeah.
But we are talking about things like trade wars, political instability,
Right.
shifting alliances.
Sure.
All these things can impact local businesses,
Yeah.
disrupting those supply chains,
Mm-hmm.
creating uncertainty in the markets.
Right.
It's a volatile world out there.
So chambers have to be like global analysts now.
They need to keep an eye on those big picture trends,
Yeah.
help their members understand what it all means for their business.
Because what happens on the world stage has real consequences here at home.
That's right. So, think about your local chamber.
Mm-hmm.
Are they plugged into these global trends? Are they helping businesses navigate the complexities of international trade?
Are they thinking about how to attract global talent?
These are all important questions to consider because in today's world, our communities can't just exist in a bubble.
Right.
We need to engage with that global economy in a way that makes sense,
That's strategic and sustainable.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have linchpin influences, timeless influences, timely influences. It's clear that chambers are facing a pretty demanding future, to say the least.
Yeah, it's a lot.
But, it also sounds like they have this incredible potential
They do.
to shape that future for their members and for their communities.
I agree.
So where do we go from here? What's next?
That's where things get really interesting. Because the Horizon 2035 report isn't just about identifying these challenges, it's about offering a vision for how chambers can overcome them and thrive in the years to come.
A vision for the future.
Okay.
I'm all ears. What does that look like?
Well, it's a really positive vision, actually. The report paints this picture of chambers as these dynamic hubs,
Okay.
adaptable hubs, really, for innovation and connection. And they're even more woven into the community than they are now.
Okay, I like that. But what does that look like, practically?
So imagine a chamber that's not just advocating for businesses, but they're a partner in developing the community.
I like that, a partner.
Yeah, working hand in hand with the local government,
Right.
with schools,
Mm-hmm.
nonprofits, to tackle those big issues.
So it's less about everyone working in their own little silos
Yeah,
and more about breaking down those walls and working together.
that's the idea. They become these master collaborators, bringing everyone together to find those solutions that work for everyone.
Solutions that benefit the entire community.
Exactly. And technology has a huge role to play in this.
Technology, yeah. We've talked about the challenges, but what about the opportunities? Like, how can chambers use tech to make a real difference?
Well, the report talks about using data analytics to really understand community needs
Okay.
and to track the impact of what they're doing.
So, like, having all that data to back up their claims?
Exactly. Imagine a chamber with this real-time dashboard
Okay.
showing things like job growth,
Mm-hmm.
new businesses being created,
Okay.
even metrics on, social well-being.
So it's like taking the guesswork out of it. Like,
Yeah.
they can actually see what's working and what's not.
Exactly. And then they can use that info to adjust their strategies, prove their value to the community.
Data-driven chambers? I like it. But, data can be kind of intimidating,
Oh, yeah.
especially for those smaller chambers that might not have, like, a whole tech team.
That's a good point.
So how do they keep up?
Collaboration is key. The report talks about chambers sharing resources and expertise. Okay,
Yeah.
maybe creating these regional data hubs that smaller chambers can tap into.
Interesting.
They could even partner with universities or tech companies to get access to those fancy tools and expertise.
So it's about leveling the playing field, making sure everyone has access to the tools they need.
That's the goal. But,
Yeah.
it's not just about the numbers themselves.
Right?
It's about using that data to tell a good story.
Storytelling.
You got it. Chambers need to be able to communicate their impact in a way that resonates with people, right?
So moving beyond those dry annual reports,
Yeah.
using social media to get the word out.
Exactly. And this ties into another part of the vision.
Okay, tell me more.
Chambers as talent magnets.
Talent magnets. Okay, so more than just attracting global talent.
It is. It's about cultivating and keeping local talent, too.
Okay, so how do they do that?
They can work with schools to develop those career pathways, connect young folks with mentors, offer internships, even create programs that help entrepreneurs start and grow businesses right there in their own community.
So it's like nurturing homegrown talent,
Yeah,
building this vibrant entrepreneurial ecosystem.
exactly. And it makes people want to stay and contribute,
Right, because if you can build a successful career in your hometown, why would you leave?
Exactly. But, all of this, it's pretty ambitious, right?
It is. It's going to take a lot of hard work, a lot of change,
Yeah,
a lot of people working together.
for sure. So do you think chambers are up to the challenge?
I think so. I mean, this report itself is a good sign.
I think so, too.
Nearly 1,000 chamber professionals contributed to this.
Right. They're clearly thinking about the future.
They're not shying away from these tough questions.
And they're working together to figure it out.
And I think that collective spirit is what makes me hopeful.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy to get overwhelmed by all the challenges.
Yeah.
But when you see people working together with that shared purpose,
Yeah.
it's really inspiring,
It is. And it reminds me of that quote we mentioned earlier.
Oh, yeah?
The future is not a place we visit. The future is what we make it.
Powerful stuff. So to our listener out there, we've thrown a lot of information at you today.
We have.
We've talked about the challenges and the opportunities facing chambers of commerce.
Yeah.
But now we want to hear from you.
What are your hopes for the future of your community?
How can your local chamber help make those dreams a reality?
Reach out to them. Share your ideas.
Get involved.
Because the future isn't something that just happens to us.
It's something we create together.
Exactly.
Nicely said. And on that note, we're going to wrap up this deep dive into the future of chambers of commerce.
Thanks for joining us.
And remember, the future is in our hands. Let's make it a good one.